You are a self-made woman.
Yes, this is true. This is the fact. I used to be a domestic worker, and I started way back in the 80s and the 90s. And while I was working as a maid, I started to do some needlework for an Afrikaans man called Yanni, and I sewed for him back in the 70s and the 80s. Then I sued him in the 90s.
Yanni!
Yeah, I think he still works for me, actually. I must check.
This is so interesting because, you know, one is, as an Afrikaner, Beauty, is that your real name, Beauty?
Well, it's my real name, so all the faces here can pronounce it.
Well, thank you. Ek is bly nou kan ek dit ook uitspreek. Do you speak
Afrikaans,
Afrikaans, Beauty?
My darling, I don't. It sounds like I've got a cough. I don't want to be rude because I know you. I mean, honestly, my dear darling, but Afrikaans, I thought it was over. I thought that we... No, I thought, you know, it was like bird flu.
Bird flu?
Yeah. A few people got infected, but then we stamped it out, you know, but...
First of all, Ben Vos, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's all it is, a good chat. We do try and at least make sure we know the person that we're talking to. And I like to, if it's someone that's involved in the arts like yourself, I do like to see a bit of videos of the act, which you've sent me, and it's really funny. I've actually really enjoyed that. My wife was in here earlier, and I told her, listen, this is actually quite good. It's very funny. And yeah. Now, you applied for a, what do you call it? Is it a special talents visa?
So the visa process, first up, yeah, so I got in on what's called a global talent visa in the arts, where you show an international standard of excellence in your specific field: arts, sports, academics, or research. So you need to be sponsored by a citizen of the country. They need to also be in your field, and they need to have an international record of excellence, and that has to be documented and submitted.
Question.
So, yes.
Who sponsored you? Are you allowed to give out that information?
Yeah, I mean, I can't see why not. He's a big name in Australia, and I was lucky enough to do a movie with him. And I mean, the more credit I can give him, the better. His name's Troy Sivan. Troy Sivan. Your younger listeners,
yeah,
they'll all know him. He's a big star. He's been on Ellen and
wow.
And guests on there, and he wins many of the top ARIA awards here, and he's a good actor, and he's a great performer, and I'm very grateful to him and his family, because
we'll check him out. We'll add a link as well.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's a megastar. He's great. And he was kind enough to say, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah.
So I got a very good sponsor, which I think made it difficult for the Australian government.
Yeah.
And then, and so you get your sponsor. You obviously have to make sure that you can employ yourself while you're here. Not employ. I can work whenever I want, wherever I want. But I need to prove that I will be able to land and make a go of it, essentially. The visa are extremely forgiving in that it gives you a permanent residency immediately, and you can live and work anywhere in Australia.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing.
I mean,
so for people who don't know about,
yeah,
like if you are, and you can apply until you're 70.
Wow.
Like, I think it's, yeah, so I'm 51. Most visas switch off at 45 or something.
You don't look a day over 50.
You see, you could have done better than that.
No, but honestly, you don't look a day over 40 something.
Yeah, nice try.
Says the 42 or 3-year-old. I can't remember even how old I am. My kids know how old I am. I have no idea.
Oh, you're not over 50?
No. I was born. Oh, you got me. Oh my goodness.
I got you.
And it's this grey. Die Wolmoedmark toe. Die Wolmoedmark skeer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's it. So it's a pretty ruthless process. I got about 10 or 15 reference letters from people all over the world, people who I've performed with over the world, people who I've producers. Sometimes you get lucky, like you had some young friend who you didn't really know would make something, and now he's the head of Carnegie Hall in New York, and you're like,
Wow.
"Phew, okay," and you worked with him once, and you say, "Please,
Yeah.
man, do you think I'm of the standard?" And they're like, "Yeah, you are. Here's your letter." So you just got to dig around. Then I wrote a sort of 10 to 15 page motivation with my entire history of my career. And I was lucky enough to have a public Wikipedia page where people had fed information into that over years, and those sorts of things. But anyone who's sort of toured internationally, lectured internationally, played sport internationally, would be would be able to apply for the visa. Yeah, like I said, gives you permanent residency immediately. But here's the greatest thing about this visa is that because it's a global talent visa, the Australian government expect you to be out of the country.
Right.
Because it's basically because I mean I'm performing in Johannesburg at the end of the year, and then I'm hoping to take a show to London next year.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to. So that you need I think it's 480 days out of 5 years in order to apply for citizenship. So basically a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
And then you can apply for citizenship. So it's a very hard visa to get. I think there's a 24% success rate of the sort of people who apply, and I think they hand out. Last I heard, it was 500 a year or something.
Yeah.
500, yeah. So I mean, but it's really, I've been so pleased with how Australia have treated me. I mean, to make a confession, I actually applied 8 years ago on the same visa, but I had no idea what it was about. I just sort of, I saw it, I did some research, I got a couple of reference letters. I did it all myself. I didn't use an immigration agency. And then they came back to me and they wanted a whole lot of more information. And I actually got a bit exhausted. And I was just like, I don't think I'm going to go ahead with this. And then we decided, my wife and I revisited it 4 years later. We thought, we're still pretty interested in Australia. So why don't we look again at our options? And we actually looked at going through her business, which was being very successful at the time. It's had a pretty good turnover, and then COVID had hit, and she struggled to meet some of the criteria. But while we were on the call with an agency this time, an immigration agent, they just Googled me, and they were like, "But you're all over the internet." I was like, "Well, all right." And they said, "Well, let's dig a bit deeper." And then they noticed that I'd done movies with John Cleese and Troye Sivan in particular. And then they said, "Well, do you think you can just put a little CV together?" And then they had a look at my Wikipedia profile, and they said, "No, I think this is going to be pretty straightforward." And I said, "Well, good luck," because I sent in a few letters once and nothing came back. So, and it was just the difference in having an agency that actually knew the criteria. When I look at it retrospectively, it was chalk and cheese.
Yeah. I must say, even for our visas, we came over on short skilled. It was easier for the agency, and probably because the paperwork was so exhausting. So handing it over, and I think we paid $2,500 for that was their fee to start off with. Obviously, you pay much more for the actual visas, but they managed all the paperwork. We just forwarded whatever they needed. It was much better. So for any of those of you who's looking to do the same, hire someone to do it for you.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think it was my woodwork teacher back in. I used to live in Fishhook many years ago, and I took the train every morning to Swanswyk in Retreat with the school, and my woodwork teacher there, he once told me, he says, "A good man does what he's told. A better man gets someone reliable to do it for him." Now tell us a bit.
With skills.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about your act. Tell us a bit what now. So I'm working up towards an angle here because you're going to be doing a show in Australia. But
yes. Yes.
Yeah, but first of all, let's get to know the person behind that act. What inspired you to just go into the business that you're in? I mean, it takes a lot of guts to dress up like an old lady and walk up on stage and put on a show, and it looks like you're having fun. You're having loads of fun.
I am. I've chosen a good career. I'm actually a qualified mechanical engineer,
What?
and
You can
and
come over on that.
and people have said that, but I mean, I let that go so long ago. I was like 24 years old. And and then I got a degree in commerce because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And then eventually, I was working as an engineer for Sappi Psycho daar op die suiderkus van Natal, and I got I just I was so unhappy as an engineer, and I always loved drama. I never studied it. I always loved theater. I loved comedy. And so as soon as my scholarship through Sappi was paid off, essentially I had to work for them for 2 years. I just said, I'm going to be an actor. And the next weekend, this is a funny story, that I basically ended up in the supermarket of South Coast Mall there by Umkomaas in a clown outfit with one of those big, like, colored wigs, with every single color you can imagine, and a full with the big buttons and the big shoes, handing out Romany creams to people on a Saturday morning. That was my first acting job, and it was to people who I used to employ as an engineer because it was a small town. So all these fitters and turners and the foremen and the welders and the boilermakers, they were all coming in with their wives on the Saturday morning to do the shopping. And there was Benny holding his Romany creams and offering it to their children. And I remember a few guys saying to me, "No, you're mal, man. What have you done? You've tossed in engineering to be a biscuit man." And then I had some success. I met a guy called John van der Reyt who wrote all the Spud books and produced the Spud movies, which I was in. And we toured sketch comedy around South Africa for many years.
Break down sketch comedy, because I actually was unfamiliar with the word until I think it's your manager or your agent or whoever I spoke to
Yes,
yesterday mentioned it to me.
So sketch comedy is a sort of British style of comedy initially that started as, if one knows Monty Python or Not the 9 O'Clock News, or, those classic sort of rather ridiculous scenarios that then you develop into a 2 to 3 minute sketch, the policeman meeting the criminal and then having some bizarre interaction. And Johnny and I were very much into political sketch comedy, though. So we were satirists. And at the time, 1998 to 2001 and 2005, even up to then, it was it was a turning point in South Africa. Post 94, we were these young, fearless guys. A lot of what you see now would seem very risky. We would take the absolute end out of the politicians. We were quite happy to play all different races. We would play all the accents. We would play, and it just really clicked with people. I think people were ripe for it,
Yeah.
Um,
So what year was that?
So we started in 98 together, and we've done sketch comedy shows up until 2017 together.
I have to point something out, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes, because I've seen similar acts. Not similar. It's not quite what I meant. But take a guy like Kevin Fraser, who's here, right?
Yeah.
He does the. How do you word it without sounding offensive?
I know what you're trying to say. He uses the African-influenced accent.
Yes,
as part of his act.
Yes, but technically, you've been doing it for a decade longer than he has.
Oh yeah. And so it's become definitely a more sensitive thing, and it's really whether people find it funny or not.
But that's the thing. No one's complaining. That's because they're finding humor in it, and I find it beautiful that people are actually embracing the comedy behind it. And in the same way, people like, for instance, Trevor Noah makes fun of the Afrikaners, for instance.
Yes.
And it's funny. I find it really funny, and I'm Afrikaans.
Yes. I mean, I think comedy, nothing should be off limits in comedy. But if it's
Absolutely.
not funny, if 98% of the world don't find it funny, then there's no point doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Totally agree.
Then it's pointless. Even if if you can find a market that finds you funny, go for it. Um, and I think Kevin's got that. I mean, I was having a discussion with a lady from the Fringe. I'm at the Adelaide Fringe at the moment, and I was having this very discussion with her. I said, "How do you think?" Because I played this a black character, person of color, whatever words we would like to use. Beauty Rama Pele Pele. She was like my bread and butter.
It's great. I love it. I love that video. I've seen it. I've watched all the 4-minute clip that you sent me.
The clips. So she was like bread and butter for me for years. I would play government functions. I'd have 80% non-white, corporate audiences, and then I would have, all white audiences at festivals. And it was at a time when I felt closer, funny enough, to the community of people of color through her, because I was looking, I was listening, I was at the toll booth, taking the money from or giving the money to the lady at the toll booth, thinking, I wonder what she's thinking. I wonder where her head's at. I wonder what her background is. So even though it looks like mockery to some, it's actually identification to me. It's like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for a country that's been through so much, they needed that. They needed to say, okay, we're going to put all the BS aside. We are one nation. Let's have a laugh. And you do it so well. Like I said, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Now the bad news is I got to the point where I felt like I was no longer finding that humorous. Like myself. Like the instinct of, there were so many good female comics of color. I was playing a female of color. There were so many good females coming out that could say that message better than me from a place that is more authentic. And I started feeling like, I'd had enough of it. Even though it was lucrative, I was getting quite a lot of stick, like I came out of a few corporate shows, and people of color would come to me and go, listen, just stay away from this now. Like, it's enough. And they weren't nasty, just clear. It's like, you're funny. I can see you're good, but why?
Too close to home?
Yeah, too close. And I mean, not that the corporate circuit was my only thing, but it's been a wrestle. It's been a wrestle for a long, because it was so successful. And then I've had to start shifting and looking elsewhere for my own well-being, really. It's not something I feel instinctively comfortable doing.
Well,
even though
what I can tell you,
the
fact that you're willing to admit as much on the channel is, look, someone once told me it's good to be a bit vulnerable, and it helps explain the decision you're making to move abroad. And it's understandable, and I think a lot of us can relate with exactly what you're saying. Now, there is loads of things the Aussies do that you can make fun of. Trust me. Tell us a bit about your show.
Okay, so now we're going in a different direction, because I've actually come here with a show about me immigrating. And it's not stand-up comedy. People think I'm a stand-up comic, or I'm a funny actor. So I play characters, but I don't go out there and be myself. I will, and this show, for the first time, I've created something that's co-written by this friend of mine, John van der Reet. And it's really the sort of heartfelt story of a guy arriving in Australia. His family are already there, his wife and child. He pitches at Sydney Airport, and they've got some slight error with his visa, something he doesn't know yet. And they stick him in an interrogation room, and they just say, wait 15 minutes, but we're going to be with you now. And he's like, okay. Whew, all right, no, that's cool. I mean, it's all going to be fine.
Yeah.
And then progressively, as it goes on, I mean, there's a lot of comedy in there, but basically, progressively as he goes on, he starts evaluating: is this, what have I stepped into? These people are telling me nothing. I don't know where I am on. I don't know where I stand. Am I going to get in? Am I going to see my family again? Is this move a good idea? He tries to order coffee. It's like $8. He's not really, what's going on here? Um, he phones his daughter. She says, no, everyone sounds funny. The birds even sound funny, But the good thing is that mommy left her purse on the table, and 2 hours later it was still there, And he's like, okay, so
Yeah.
And throughout the hour of him waiting, there's a suspense about whether he'll get in or not. And at the end of that hour, the audience get their answer. And in the process, I sort of dissect Australia a little bit. I dissect South Africa a little bit. But it's mainly that no man's land that all of us, specifically through your Oorsee app and your website, that we've all gone through, this idea of like, now I am no one's. I don't belong anywhere. Just all I have is my head and myself in this no man's land between two lives. And so he looks so it's actually a bit of drama in it. Yeah.
That's I'm looking forward to that. It's like a small movie of half of the stories, well, three quarters of the stories I've heard through Oorsee, and speaking with people that's moved anywhere in the world. I've spoken to people who moved to the UK, and they feel like they don't belong anywhere anymore because they've been just long enough out of the country to feel like they're not welcome anymore back home whenever they go back, and they never feel quite at home in the UK because they're not from there. And I thought for myself, and even some of my Australian friends that I've made here that watched that interview says they can't even imagine what it must feel like to not belong. Because for a lot of them, they grew up here, they take citizenship pretty much for granted because it's their birthright. And then for us that need to put up the fight and sacrifice 20 years of pension and whatever to find the perfect spot for us abroad, we need to put in the hard yards. And I think it's amazing that there's people like yourself out there that's willing to paint us that story. I won't just label it as you're telling that story. You're painting something for us, a picture that we can see, and it's only like a small part or a small scenario of what someone could and possibly have gone through. Where in other cases, people have been stuck on, say, for instance, Melbourne Airport, or they were like myself. I had to wait 6 weeks longer for my visa. My wife and my son and my daughter came over 6 weeks before me. I want to admit and say I was terribly lonely and I missed him very much, and I did. But I also had loads of fun just walking the streets of London and visiting the pubs and cinemas, and yeah, because we moved from South Africa to the UK and then from the UK to here. But anyway, that's my story. We're telling yours.
No, that's fascinating. I mean, I think I try and put that into a microcosm of an hour, that sense of like just not knowing whether your life is going to turn out well or not. I sort of distill it.
Yeah.
But I mean, on a personal level, I've only been in Adelaide. We came here for 6 weeks, traveled around the country, just looking at where we thought we might want to stay. We flew into Brisbane and flew out of Adelaide. I know your channel is worldwide. You just happen to be in Australia. But just that sense of difference between, okay, we're on holiday now, checking it out, versus, okay, I've landed here now to work and get a show going and get audiences and talk to producers and talk to theaters. And I honestly, in that first 10 days, my mind was not in the right place. I felt very lonely. I felt very foreign. Missed my family incredibly. I mean, I'm still missing them, and I'm only 2 weeks in now. But this is only just very recently. And I got a little hint of what that must be like now, where your mind is slowly going, okay, this is now home. These trees are home. This road is going to be home. taking a tram has got to feel like home. This beach needs to feel like home. And it's small little notes in your head, but it's overwhelming when
Yeah.
they all suddenly come together and you go, now I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm on my own here. I don't have my family. I'm just putting this thing on my own. But at the same time, that's exactly what we need in order to grow, as human beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Mom, I mean, when I landed here, my wife was a very, very well trained in the Aussie way, and she knew how to walk and where to go and to get the best prices, where to go to take the kids out for a bit of a run and those sorts of things. And uh, if you ask her about it today, she still vividly remembers how hard it was. She had a baby with her, and then my son, who was 4 or 5 at the time, it was struggling. My father-in-law joined her for the first 2 weeks, but then he had to fly back to London, and yeah, it was tough as nails, and she just couldn't start working because she couldn't afford the childcare because we were obviously on a working visa, not on a permanent residence like we are today. So we still had to pay those full fees. So she was basically waiting for me to go knight in shining armor to come to a rescue, and I was in London drinking
Having a jaw.
drinking
You having a
beer.
jaw. We can tell
Oh,
behind your eyes that you're having a good
I,
time.
I will never stop paying off that debt. Why Adelaide?
Well,
I think I had this discussion a couple of days ago with someone. Who did I interview? Oh, Forgiveness. And
yeah,
I think, yeah, he's getting beef from Adelaide for not going over there to do his show.
yes,
And I spoke to another guy, Duncan Welgemoed. He owns Africola there, which is a very
yes,
well-known South African restaurant. Um,
yes.
his brother, sorry, his cousin is Sean Welgemoed. I don't know if you know music really well, but old band in South Africa called Sad and Gas, who's now in
Oh, yes, I do
America.
remember that.
Yeah, that's Duncan Welgemoed's cousin. He's
Okay.
in Adelaide. He owns the restaurant. He's a Michelin star chef. Really, really,
I
really
was
amazing.
actually supposed to go there last night, and the lady who organized it said she was ill. Duncan,
Ah,
yeah.
are
So I
you
didn't know.
able to tell him you spoke to me? Tell him you said, "Oh, he's a really great guy," and just tell him that I say you guys need to sort of appreciate that moment together because you're probably the only two South Africans in Adelaide.
I've got one sitting on the couch right here.
All
So,
right.
um,
Sorry.
no, I mean, but this is the thing. Like, the family I'm staying with have been
Yeah.
incredibly friendly. They've like let me in. They've gone, hey, come and stay. I had an Airbnb booked, and then suddenly I got a message saying, why don't you come stay with us? We're South Africans. Come stay with us. And that's just through. I was amazed, and now I'm having this great stay, chatting to you in
So
the house.
the person on the couch is that the owner of the house? Is that correct?
That's the wife of the owner of the house. They
Can
both
I
own that.
can I have the clock behind him? I love that
Well,
clock. I love
you
it.
want the clock?
I want the clock.
Eh? You want the clock?
Yes.
Say scone.
I'll swap you for one of my baby photos behind me. You see? I've got some baby pictures there.
Well, she was saying to me beforehand, make sure you get rid of the baby photos behind. I was like, no.
No, they're beautiful. No, I love
Yeah.
that clock. It's amazing. And that'll make a beautiful Oorsee back piece on the interviews because it's got a world map on it, you see? See?
Ah.
Yeah, see, I'm going with a plan. Now I'm just joking about Adelaide. It's a running joke in Australia. They always joke with Adelaide as well as Tasmania because yeah, Adelaide's a very quiet state. We never really see much of Adelaide in the
Okay,
news.
I'll tell you. I'll justify
Um,
myself after being here 2 weeks. Um, so the Adelaide International Arts Festival is the only reason I'm here at the moment. I
I
fly back.
knew it had something to do with your line of work. I just knew it.
Yeah. And it's the biggest arts festival in the Southern Hemisphere and the second biggest in the world, only to Edinburgh Fringe. So it's a massive festival on the calendar of theatre and
Yeah.
performance. And so I thought for me, it's the best landing area for a new show. I'll just give it a try. Mm.
If you're looking at doing shows abroad, I've interviewed people like Rob van Vuuren. Although his stuff
Yes.
looks very dark, I don't know how it compares with yours.
No,
But
he's good. He's comic and he's theatre. He does both. He's a bit like me, similar.
yeah, I can forward you his details if you wanted. Maybe you guys
I
can.
know him very well.
Oh, right. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Yeah.
And then, yeah, I reckon you need to reach out to Kevin. We actually became good mates over the years. So, unfortunately, I couldn't visit his Melbourne show when he was here. He sent me some tickets, but I gave it to my wife, and she took a friend, and they ended up going to support him over there. It was really cool to see. She was sitting right in front of Cindy Nell, old Miss South
Ah,
Africa, who
oh yeah,
also
I remember.
moved to Australia. Surprising. Well,
Hmm.
not surprising really, because it's the place to be. I've My business partner lives in America, and yeah, I reckon you don't want to be there at this stage. Things are just so weird at the moment. So, as far as countries are concerned, New Zealand, Australia, possibly even Canada is a good destination for South Africans looking to go abroad. I know there's some opportunities coming with America and all of that. I don't like speaking to those things because I don't fully understand them.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's just a personal opinion.
Hmm.
Any advice? And I think you've given some considerable advice already for South Africans looking to move abroad. How about some advice on choosing where to settle? Because you said you traveled around a bit before you decided on Adelaide, and I know you said it's because of the whole arts theatre, but what else made you decide Adelaide's the place to be?
So I haven't settled on Adelaide. That's why I'm literally
Ah,
here performing.
I knew it.
Um, listen, the Adelaide locals still right
Brisbane.
here.
Just waiting for
Um,
the cyclone to fully pass, then he's going up to Brisbane. I know
I can just. She
it.
says no, I'm staying. So I've got my dad's in Sydney and he's been there for 30 years.
Ah, wow.
Um, which is and he's getting older. So for me, that is an attraction for Sydney.
Mm.
We loved Sydney. I also was lucky enough to have a conversation with, this is true, the head of KFC Global, who's an ex-South African, and now look at me, I'm going to forget his name, which is terrible.
Colonel
I hope he,
Sanders.
oh, that's the one. Yeah. Um, and he moved over here as a South African for a job, I think, with KFC in Australia. Became head of Asia Pacific, became head of global. Went to Kentucky for 7 years or something around from there.
Mm.
His advice was all the development in Australia is going to be happening from sort of Sunshine Coast south to Gold Coast in the next 20 years.
Mm.
That's where the sort of the spaces, the organization, the beauty, the infrastructure. Sydney will always be a high price, high commodity destination for anyone who's
Yeah.
lived there, but unexpandable. Obviously, restrictions with the harbour, restrictions with roads and traffic, like genuine restrictions. He says Melbourne's in a bit of trouble financially, apparently going, um,
Oh.
um, in his words, going bankrupt. I don't know. Listen, we're not experts here. It's like, I'm not talking.
We
We're
need
not
to
talking.
move.
Where are you? Oh,
Melbourne.
yeah, well.
I don't know anything about it. As far as our last research we've done was Victoria's got the most money. So
Oh,
I'm hoping that's true. It's a great place to live. It's cold. The winters here just seems a bit longer than everywhere else. It's a bit lower down on the world maps than Cape Town, because everyone's always comparing Melbourne with Cape Town. It's wrong.
yeah,
Compare Melbourne with
yeah.
Sydney rather. It's more aligned. Um,
Uh,
I was lucky enough to get a job offer in Sunshine Coast last year in Noosa. I declined it because it wasn't quite what I was looking for, and we weren't in the right season to go. My
mm,
wife will never forgive me for saying no to that job, because it's, as far as the perfect climate to live, is probably Noosa. But it's very expensive. But you on that border before anything north of Noosa wants to eat you. So anything on Noosa and below is sort of a ride, and you got
mm,
that perfect weather all year round.
mm.
But yeah, as for now we're down here in Melbourne. It's still hot and humid, but the weather will soon enough change, and yeah, it'll be freezing.
Yeah. So in terms of advice for settling, I don't know yet. Um, I want to be in a small town on the sea because I can write and then tour from anywhere. Like,
Mm.
that's just my job. My wife is an events coordinator and an events planner, has a very successful events business back home. She wants to be in Sydney, clapping it.
Try
Um,
Melbourne. You'll be surprised.
yeah.
There's lots
Well,
of
the
South
art
Africans there.
scene in Melbourne, all the agents, the film agencies that I've contacted, all of that's in Melbourne. All of
Well,
that.
we brought. Well, I'm saying we. It's actually SA Events brought Nathaniel and Karen Zoid over last year. I had the privilege of picking Nathaniel up at the airport. Him, Charles Besaidenout, and Floors, the guy that plays guitar for Afrikaans is Groot. And what a car ride that was. The fact that I didn't have a camera running, I can still shoot myself in the
Kick
foot.
yourself.
It was it's so funny. But my point is, we drove down to Frankston Arts Theatre. Now, Frankston, if you know anything about Frankston, my wife works there, is it's like Paddo, but by the sea. The sea and the beach side is great, but everything up north from Frankston is yeah, it's questionable. But the arts theatre was pretty impressive. Beautiful theatre area, nice big seats, double story, cafeteria area outside, lounges, the whole thing. And even Atana was like, "Oh, this is actually pretty great." So yeah, come check it.
That's on like the Mornington Peninsula.
That's correct. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, I
Frankston is
went and
basically
visited. I had a look at that.
yeah. So we're
Yeah.
we're in Mount Martha in the Mornington Peninsula, and in Frankston is
Okay.
just before the peninsula, like literally on the border.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got a very good mate on the Mornington Peninsula. We stayed with him for 2 days
Oh
when we
yeah.
came through there. Yeah.
Which suburb?
No, vra jy my een vraag.
Somerville.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I
No,
can't
so
remember.
it's big. Mornington
He's on
Peninsula.
a small holding.
Yeah.
So it's like, a piece of land, maybe 2 acres, something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right. So it's probably more tie-up side, and that's I work in tie-up, and that's where
Okay.
the more the farm areas is. Well, although you do get some of them here down by the beach side, yeah.
Yeah.
But really nice spot to live, especially this time of year. It's great.
He keeps telling me to come there. And you know what's great? Every single person, South African I know that lives in Australia, wants me to live where they live, which makes me think they're happy
I'm just
and they
being
like
nice.
and they like where they are. You're just being polite. But I find that everyone says, no, man, this is the best place, which is a good advert for people moving. It's not like they're going, "Oof, don't come here. I'm having a rough time. Go somewhere else."
Look, we also have we're comparing it with where we came from. Now I was fortunate enough to grow up in like the Namaqualand and the Karoo, and then I did a few years in the Strand where I lived. I met my wife in Gordons Bay, which is all of those places were great, but you sort of take your circumstances as normal. Then you move abroad. Then you see how things are supposed to be, like running water, electricity, safety. All those things are your God-given right. Now suddenly you're getting those things because they say you know you need this. You didn't have it back home necessarily, and then you start comparing. So everywhere, pretty much where you go, is amazing. It's lights.
I see. I know. I am seeing that. I haven't absorbed it yet because I haven't been here long enough. Um, but I'm grateful for that. I
Yeah.
am grateful. And I'm grateful for options and opportunity. Like, we're lucky.
Pretty much the definition of Oorsee. On that note, Rob, it was did I just call you Rob? Ben.
Thanks. No,
Because
it's fine. As long as you cut that. No, I'm joking.
I'm thinking about Rob from Vieren and Ben
Yes,
Vos.
I know.
Yeah,
I
no,
know.
I'll probably Ben.
No problem.
Yes, I must say, whoever made your Wikipedia page, they need to at some stage
That's
update.
exactly what I look like. Look, you've got me in bad light at a bad time of day. Okay. And I flew in yesterday and I'm jet lagged.
How do you
So
get a Wikipedia page? I love it. I want one. It's so cool.
you know what? I don't know. Honestly, someone started it somewhere and it just went on.
Whenever I speak to anyone that's on Wikipedia, they say they have no idea how it got there. Don't read the information on there because it's all incorrect. But you're saying yours is pretty much up to date, so I'm going to add that link in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty accurate. Yeah,
born in Rhodesia. Yeah, there you go.
correct.
Not. I wonder how many
Well,
people that watch this video actually knows Rhodesia is Zimbabwe. Yeah.
yeah.
Ben, thank you
was
so much for the chat. It's been amazing. It's been great. I'm looking forward to seeing your show. Now, it's going to be theatre, so in order to see it, I need to keep an eye out for it whenever it's here in my neck of the woods.
Yes, I think so. So it's comic theatre. I think, to be fair, this chat was more about, the immigration
Immigration,
process
yeah.
and the interest around this global talent visa, which some people might suddenly see the video and go, hey, I could have a shot at that, and I think they should.
Yeah.
But the show is called Becoming Benno. I'm doing 2 weeks at the Adelaide Festival at the moment. Then I fly back to South Africa. I've got a run of it there for a month, and then I'm playing in Johannesburg at the Civic Theatre for this isn't interest for you guys, but just for 3 months.
Oh,
And then I'm coming back to Australia permanently in January.
yeah. And you're bringing your family.
Yeah. Then the family will come. This is me just feeling my way professionally and seeing how it goes and how I land.
But we look forward to see where it's going, and I'm
Thank
pretty
you.
sure it's going to be great.
Thanks, Steven. Shot for the chat, man.
Yes, thank you so much. And
Now go dye your beard now.
yes, I'll make it
like-
blonde. I'll text you my address for that nice clock behind you.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Have a good evening.